Hello, I'm Lynne Franks, your host, and welcome to my latest podcast episode of Frankly Speaking with Lynne Franks and Friends. My special guest in this episode is the very inspirational Lulu Urquhart, who is a landscape designer and a rewilding advocate, as well as a spiritual inspiration, as I found when she spoke at my International Women's Day on Women and the Land back in March. Lulu, together with her business partner Adam Hunt, won the Gold Award at the Chelsea Flower Show 3 years ago, which was very controversial at the time, as their natural garden was very different from all the more traditional winners in the past. As we're coming up, or we're part of this year's Chelsea Flower Show, I thought it was a great time to hear Lulu's ideas on how spirituality, connection with the land, women's leadership, and everything that is true and natural can come together to create a wonderful, wonderful future for all of us. Hi, Lynne Franks here on the latest episode of my podcast, Frankly Speaking with Lynne Franks and Friends. And today I'm here with the quite extraordinary and magnificent Lulu Urquhart, who is a newer friend in my life, but somebody I know is going to be a close friend for many, many years, and has inspired me on so many levels since we met quite recently. And Lulu, for those who don't know, is a landscape designer, plants woman. She supports regenerative land practices and many, many other things, all of which we're going to talk about. And Lulu spoke at my event on International Women's Day here about women and the land, sowing the seeds. Every time I hear her speak, I'm just completely blown away. And what I love, many things I love about her, but what I really love is the fact that she and her business partner, Adam Hunt, got the gold prize at Chelsea Flower Show years ago. Well, not years ago, 2 years ago, wasn't it? And that in itself, for such a kind of establishment type event, is just something to really celebrate. So, Lulu, hi. So I want to start off talking to you about how you...
I feel the same, by the way.
Thank you, love.
Thank you.
I want to talk to you about how you started in all this, because it's so very specific, the work you do. And you sent me over some really interesting articles that you've written for, is it House and Gardens?
It's Homes and
Homes and
Gardens. We
Gardens.
did the column
And
for you.
so I learned things, well, as much I don't know about you, and hopefully I'll know more by the time we finish recording today. But the fact that you put up a whole new circle of stones, that what you've been doing with beavers and the rewilding, there's so much to talk about, and the Indian aspect of what your journeys to India have taught you and what's going on over there. There's so much to talk about. But let's start with you to begin with. So tell me, how did you get involved in all this? What's your story?
Oh, thank you, Lynn. Well, I mean, I don't know. I've just written the word sacred, and I think, um, I think one of the really big callings for me very early on, in my life was this feeling that everything is sacred, and I think, um, and that's non-religious denomination. I don't. I studied world comparative religion at Edinburgh.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. So that's already, I learned something about you that makes a lot of sense.
and that was a real quest to kind of go deeper into faith and spirituality and how all these different so-called religions lead to paths up the same mountain and this beautiful kind of relationship with something that's other and bigger and wider than our sort of human frame. And I realized by the end of that there were paths up at the same mountain, and that there was a dogma that I wasn't really on board with. It was for me much more of the essence, and I think a lot of my life has just been following that essence actually,
Hmm.
and I still love it, and I still um, I, it calls me every day in the sense of even when I forget and I'm running around and in my head, um, I, it doesn't take a second just to go back, just to stop and just connect and just go, wow, everything has a voice. And it's just getting ourselves out the way and listening. And I think my journey into nature and plants and, into the world of, land and then land listening really has has just been following the golden threads, following my nose, and um, and trying to listen, trying to get myself out of the way and listen, really.
So it didn't start with gardening and landscape design. It started with you following a spiritual path at university. So how did you
Mm,
get from there to the land? I totally get the following of the sacred and the following of the call.
yeah.
It's just so beautiful and makes perfect sense, of course. Sometimes you
Yeah,
don't even
and
know why why the journey
no,
takes us where it does, but it just sort of happens,
no,
doesn't it?
I know. And actually, it's only when you sit down at moments like this and you think, oh gosh, oh wow, there it all is, weaving together all the time.
Yeah.
So it's really lovely to sit and have a think and kind of sort of reassess or recompose and watch the weaves. But how did it go to gardening? I think after a couple of different careers from fair trade and even a little bit of sort of creative awards for advertising and some production work and things. I just had a real strong sense that I needed to get my hands in the soil. And I could see myself in years forward with a kid on my back and my hands in the soil. And so that was in my early 20s. And I was like, wow, I better just get myself to the soil then, if that's what it's going to be, to help that happen.
Did you grow up in the country? I mean, I know I've seen
Yeah.
your family around here in Somerset. Is this where you
I
came
grew
from?
up, yeah. Actually, it was my dad was in the army, and so we were kind of gypsy like all over, as you are in those scenarios. And so I realized that a bit about myself as well, that I was quite nomadic, and um,
Which
and
is more
then
of a reason to want to put your hands in the soil to actually
yeah,
dig the
maybe. But
soil.
then we finally settled when I was about 6 or 7 in a
Oh, okay.
village in Berkshire. And that's my father left the army and we grew up there, really.
Hmm.
And that was a small, idyllic, halcyon village, running around, free, every day free. And so I had a strong connection to all things nature there. Although, of course, yeah, it was an older way, wasn't it then? And there wasn't such a green belt in that area that there is now. Or no, is that the word green belt? A
Yeah, yeah.
commuter belt. I meant
Commuter
commuter
belt, yeah.
belt. Yeah. That anyway. So, but yeah, I came to Somerset. Um, through a dear friend who I'd been working in Bath looking after a beautiful kid, and she just helped me set me up with a place to live, a suggestion. But really, I wanted to come and work with the plants. And I spoke a bit about it at your Women's Day that it was the Ayurvedic medicine that drew me and working with folklore and translating that kind of the healing that Ayurveda has through the plants into the body systems, translating that with British herb law. And I read, my dad gave me some amazing early like books written by gypsy and gypsy women, and about this incredible herb law that we have and the healing power of our plants. And somehow I was like, there must be a connection between that, like the way you can whole body heal in the Ayurvedic system to the way that we can whole body heal here. And funnily enough, in the 80s, it was just and 90s, it was such a kind of it was so much less kind of on the surface, all of this information about herbs, but it doesn't take much digging, and it made me want to study Ayurvedic herb medicine, and then it made me want to understand how plants grew.
And interestingly, of course, we have such a tradition in this country of herbalist medicine women, midwives that became, as we know, 500, 600, 700 years ago, sort of portrayed as witches, and in fact they were the healers of the communities. And it's very interesting to me, as I also live in Somerset, not far from you, is how many women of all ages have been attracted to come back and live here. And it's like we're kind of reclaiming that aspect of ourselves, that connection with the land. I mean, I'm not
Mm,
knowledgeable like you are, but I feel it. I feel it in my body. It's no, I know it's where I'm supposed to be. And in
yeah.
terms of the herbs that you were attracted to, as you were talking about Ayurvedic herbs, obviously the herbs they use in India are very different from the herbs we have here. Everybody around the world has their own indigenous herbs which are appropriate for the healing of their people from that land. I remember going to South Africa the first time, and the woman that I, friend that I went with, felt really sick, got really sick, and they told her to put some of the soil in her mouth, and that would stop, which I
Mm.
guess is the fulvic minerals, if we look at it, that would stop the sickness, and it did. So
That's
I
beautiful.
think so. When you were getting into the way of Ayurvedic herbs, which I completely agree, I'm a great believer in. At the same time, you were looking at the power of the herbs here. In one of your articles I read today, you talked about mistletoe, for example, the
Mm.
power of mistletoe. Do you want to share a little bit about that and
Yeah, I
the
mean,
other herbs that we can find in this country that are so powerful?
yeah, I mean, mistletoe is just fascinating to me. It's her name was Heal All Heal. It wasn't mistletoe back 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 in the days, and it was an Anglo-Saxon name, which was like sticky toes. I think that was the mistletoe,
Um,
which is actually quite a kind of crude
yeah,
translation for much more kind of divine energy of all heal. Um, and yeah, it's yeah, I mean, it is do you know what? Of all those articles I wrote in Homes and Gardens, the only time I ever got edited ever was when I wrote that the properties of mistletoe include healing cancer.
oh, no, you're not allowed to say anything like
And
that
you couldn't
anywhere.
say that, right? They were like, "Rup." And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that's so interesting. But it is, it is amazing that they use mistletoe in injections for cancer
Yes, they
treatments.
do. Yes, they do.
And, the
Germany, I think particularly, they've always used
yes,
mistletoe in
exactly.
healing cancer.
Yes, they've used it for a long time and it's
Hmm.
available here. You can,
Hmm.
there's clinics in places like Bristol.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I think mistletoe is one of those plants where they grow on trees, they never touch the earth, and the druids used to cut them with copper sickles, copper being a sort of a metal of resonance and aligning to planetary energies, and they would cut the mistletoe and catch it in a white cloth so it never touched the ground, it never grounded or earthed. And there was this kind of sort of how would you call it, like an angelic kind of etheric like property of mistletoe. um, and so there's something around the connection of that in its healing, and then I guess the properties of it so deeply nourishing. I mean, some of those plants that people say are toxic are actually
Healing.
some of our, yeah, most used plants
Mm.
in some of our most serious
So
illnesses, like
you still made quite a jump. So you went from coming to Somerset, starting to get attracted to the land, putting your hands
mm,
into it, and
yeah.
finding out more about the natural ways of healing. How did it go from there to becoming what is actually a very, very successful business?
Well, I think I fell in love with that. I was working at Pennard Plants, sweet,
Oh yeah,
small nursery, specialist nursery. Beautiful man, Chris Smith, really amazing plantsman. And I kind of bobbled around various specialist plants, nursery people after that. Um, and as I worked with them, like Jekka McVicker up at Northern Bristol, and another guy, Johnny Norton, who had a specialist, he used to work, he grew up in Lambrook, um, Marjorie Fisher's old garden. So all these people had these amazing palettes, you could call it, of plants, of real, like robust plants that know what they're doing, reliable and beautiful garden forms. And so I went from herbs, full spectrum, into this kind of, more aesthetic, sort of scene, but at the same time dealing with customers all the time and helping them understand, learning and then translating how to help plants survive, what to do if they're struggling and things like that. So at the end of the day, kind of got used to talking to people about it. And I was just working as a gardener. I was living in Backham by then in a little cottage house, and worked as a village gardener, and just loved putting the plants together, loved the mixes. And I think I always will.
mm.
Um, and so a lot of that has been very useful. I guess that's a painterly thing, which is, was always a love of mine, composition and
The aesthetics, the colours. shapes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm.
Even so much as theatre I loved when I was young, and it's kind of that whole scene of building
Yes.
an entire multi-dimensional thing. Um,
Delight, a multi-dimensional visual delight.
yeah, that has to kind of work on all the different,
Mm.
aspects. But then I met this lovely man, Adam Hunt, and he just left the Dorset Council, and he was helping food farm farmers markets
Oh,
to
yes, you said he started the first farmers market in Dorset.
across the
Or
southwest. Yeah.
yeah,
And he decided to jack it in and go and become a garden designer as well. So just at that moment, we were both starting out, and um,
and
and
how
we
long
did
ago? How long ago was that?
20 years.
Oh, really? Oh, long, long, long time. Yeah,
Yeah. So we'd been in, and well, it was probably a little bit more than that. And then we did a first project together in Bristol. We did a GP, two GPs that were also homeopaths, both of them,
yeah.
and they wanted a homeopath's garden. And
Oh, what a wonderful project.
yeah, and Adam said to me, "Look, you do the plants, and I'll do the structures," and off we went.
Oh, wonderful. And of course, now you have some really, really big projects that you do. And one that I was reading about again this morning was about the stones that you actually produced or created a stone circle on the lines of the original Stonehenge type circles with the Welsh stone. And I can't even imagine how you got. Do you want to talk about it? It was a wonderful
Oh,
reading about it. It's
yeah.
wonderful.
I mean, it's beautiful. I actually went to see them this week and said hello because we're doing some tree planting up at that estate, and it's near here. It's near Mells, and I work with a map dowser, so we map dowse the land, and we're working long term with these clients on a kind of big vision picture, and so we map dowsed. Which means dowsing on a map and work and following the ley lines. And so once we saw some very significant configuration in one of the fields, we realized that it was an ancient structure of old. And there was enough to show us that what was a very lovely stone circle was actually very, like, with small stones, small
Yeah,
rock to
yeah.
mark this circle. And it was a lovely wildflower meadow. And previous owners had actually added even chalk to the first foot we discovered by digging when we made the new stone circle and actually digging the holes for the stones. We saw that they'd actually even put in chalk. So there was a very special feeling about this field and this area, this circle zone. But the ley lines were such that they were so strong that we thought it would be crazy to not mark them with much bigger stones. And the clients were really
But wonderful clients to A, be able to afford to do it, and B, understand how important it is to do it. What do you
totally.
think the circles were used for originally? Do you think temples or?
I mean,
Mm.
visionary clients. I don't know. I think all will be revealed. I mean, what I'm feeling, what we're seeing coming through is it's quite a strong portal in the center of the stone circle. So,
Okay, that
and
makes
it's probably
sense.
connecting to lots of different things on the
Like the
vertical.
moon and
Yeah,
stars,
planetary,
planetary.
potentially the
Yeah.
sun, exactly. And then it's sort of activating it within the grid. So that maybe a portal energy, maybe even creating a sort of pyramid type energy above ground, below ground, that kind of thing. And then in the unseen, and then these stones resonating to create a field that is, palpably stronger than by putting these big megaliths in. I mean, each one were, there were a couple that were 15-ton stones. It was
God.
big work. But
So
you're right.
huge trucks, obviously, enormous trucks to
Oh
bring
my
them from
goodness.
Wales. I can't
Yeah,
even
yeah,
imagine.
exactly. From
And where did
Wales.
you get them from, actually? From a
Well,
some
yeah,
kind of
it's, North Wales, near Snowdonia. Although, do you know the name of Snowdonia, the original name? I
no.
know we're not supposed to use anyway. And they yeah, the clients have really strong connections with Wales, and they are really visionary clients. They are really brilliant. Like, you seed an idea and they beyond run with it. And that's what's really lovely about these days and this time, I think, is that I think before we were having, Adam and I would lead our horses to the waters. and for them to drink. Whereas now I feel like our client bases are more like they find us and then they're the ones shooting the golden arrows actually, and they're really visionary, really seeing land in a different way, and this igniting on the idea of ecological restoration and kind of healing on all different levels. So I think it is a really a changing time, and I think Adam and I are so lucky to be at one of those first waves on the crest of a huge wave of change on the
Yes,
land. The land is being treated and considered. Uh,
yes, yes.
so yeah, well, I mean, we're working in on projects for NHS hospital prototypes where you can see a tree in every window from every
Right.
bed.
Are they still going to be able to go ahead with things like that with all the cuts?
I think I just don't go into that
Well,
too much. I think
let's assume they are because
they're
it's
always going to need prototypes of hospitals, and I think
yeah,
we have to keep kind of like I said, firing
staying
hard.
positive because that's it's using the land for healing. I love that idea. Every window has a tree. It's
Yeah, and where the gardening staff are celebrated within the whole hospital staff, and they grow food
mm.
on the roof, and you
Oh,
know, and I mean, loads of other public projects that we're involved with, equally as visionary. So I think, it is an extraordinary time, and it's nice to remember that there's a lot of deeply hopeful projects out there.
that's so important, isn't it? Because if we just believe what we read in the papers or we hear on the news, it's so down. And in fact, there are some wonderful things. I remember bumping into you at one point, I think it was a 42 acres, when you were talking about a golf course in Croydon that was being turned into something that was going to be some kind of ecological, beautiful
Yeah, Birch
space.
Hotel. Yeah,
Oh, it's a
Sebastian
hotel.
Cox. Yeah, an entire derelict or disused hotel and golf course grounds,
Yeah,
Croydon, that he took over to and rewilded the entire golf course
amazing.
with Derek Gow and other professionals helping him. But yeah, and I visited just as the hotel opened, and it was incredible. Um, Already the species were coming back, the butterflies and various other,
Birds and
even just the different flowers coming through the swards of the
mm.
grass.
And
Uh,
I've been a big believer for a long time in this whole area of community growing. Um, and I've been looking at what Incredible Edibles has done up north and how that idea of growing vegetables for the community, by the community, that everybody can take for themselves, rewilding, working between the schools and the universities and the farmers, bringing everybody together as one, really. And it's something that's totally inspired me that we should be doing everywhere, urban and rural, really. How do you feel about that? Because that's one of the things that I would love to see. It's kind of interesting, really, that I use the word seed to really represent the work I do. SEED is an acronym for me for Sustainable Enterprise and Empowerment Dynamics. It's the name of my book, and it's there to empower women to start their own sustainable businesses in different ways, and has become a leadership program. And I'm about to launch a whole series of, well, I've got some already, groups of women, which I'm calling pods, to keep it keep it going in their own community, where they can decide what is right for them to do collectively. They want to give back, they want to be part of something with others. And there's like an army of amazing women out there, perhaps who are not working or working part-time, whose children have left home, maybe a bit younger, but have a huge amount of wisdom. So this sort of pods in communities that can grow their own vegetables and work with others and bring the communities together is something I see growing more and more as we become so aware of the importance of feeding ourselves and our families with healthy food. And we also won't have a lot of choice. That's another point. So
yeah,
community coming together, growing heritage seeds, organic vegetables, renewing land. And I think when I've read about Incredible Edibles, they sort of were taking land from the local police station, the car park. We've
yeah,
all got, I mean, we're short in this country, of course, of large pieces of land because we have these enormous historic landowners who own the big estates, and those that have been sold have carried on being sold to wealthy people from other countries. But we have a lot of land in our front gardens and in our back gardens and in our little towns and villages that could be used, and some people do. I know in Kilburn, for example, there's a station there where the community have been growing their vegetables and fruit trees and other things on the platforms, and they help themselves. And over
Mm.
the years, I've kind of been tracking really what's been going on as much as I can. Obviously, with COVID and the shutdown, a lot of things finished, but I still feel that that's the way forward is for communities to come together, led by the women, to grow gardens. That's my vision. And those gardens will feed us, teach the children how to grow their own food and really bring the community together. So do you think that that's feasible today with what's going on? What is going on? I don't know. I don't even know what I mean by that actually. But do you think
Well,
that that's something you could relate to?
yeah, I mean, I mean, the things I think about when you talk around that, I think, I mean, my sister's a cook in Bristol, and I supported her once just doing a community event, just helped doing a community event where all the community were cooking waste food in Bristol,
Hmm.
and I think it's a well-known and kind of
I don't know,
enterprise.
but they do some
They
wonderful things in Bristol.
take waste food from chuckouts from restaurants and then give it back to the communities who then cook together and create, and they bring chefs in to help them make lovely things. But what you see is community of diverse cultures and backgrounds.
Is that's not 94 Waves, is it? Because there's a project a friend of mine runs in Bristol, which is because there's something like 94 dialects of different languages, actually, of different people in Bristol. And so she brings the women together quite regularly and they cook for each other with their own different cultures. Anyway, it may be similar. There's some
I
amazing
mean,
initiatives going
it's
on in Bristol
similar,
generally.
yeah. It was a sort of food waste initiative,
Yeah, no, I don't think that was
um,
what it was.
which I would have to
Don't worry,
find
we'll
out.
find another time.
Yeah, but I what I saw was that communities coming together and around the subject of food, um, people become one. And I think, I mean, from my experience, Susie Martineau and I set up the Tree Conference a few years ago, and so that was our community project to talk about and bring together the information from the trees, like in a kind of whole way, like how um, how they are critical for our environment, our climate, and us as people. And which is ridiculous to even say that, isn't it? I mean, of course they are, and our ancestors,
Mm,
effectively, our teachers. But what I really remember from that was this analogy of a bowl of sugar and in a big mountain. I can't remember whose kind of analogy it is, but in order to change things, you can't put like if you really want to change the whole, society and the way we're functioning, um, if you pour water on the bottom of that pyramid of sugar, it soaks up from the base and dissolves slowly as, and basically the top collapses within the hole as the sort of as the base of the pyramid kind of dissolves, right?
yeah, which I think we're seeing right now, actually,
You
in the
don't
world.
dissolve it from the top, you dissolve it
Yeah,
from the bottom.
yeah,
And I think what I really feel from what you were saying around food feeding us, communities as one, is that feeling of that sugar mountain dissolving from the base. Is that and it was the same sense we have with the tree conference. It's like we can't keep shooting to the top to change things. We've got to come together and we've got to do it from below. And
absolutely.
these, I think these community projects are just um, they're so important. We must work together,
Yeah,
and together we're stronger.
yeah.
And I think obviously there's the divide of our information about food and as us also um I think as well there's also pledging with our feet or with our dollar, our pound, like buying food that comes from good sources. That's We can do that. Actually, one of my first businesses when I was here in Somerset, when I was a gardener, was building window boxes, wooden window boxes, because I thought, well, I'll just get these healing plants and I'll do traditional diagnostic techniques, and, take the pulses, read the tongue, read the eyes, and then work out what people need and stick it in window box so anyone can have a healing box, right?
I love that.
And it was just like, at the end of the day, we've all got a power to grow some plants near us, and we've all got a power to work together in community. And I think, I think for me, food and regenerative food systems are really important, and also the way food is woven into the land, so it's not so food and other.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about communities growing in towns and in cities and as well as in rural areas. And
Yeah.
you had a wonderful experience with Cambridge and a mosque that you were involved with. Do you want to tell me that story? Because I love that, so inspiring.
Yeah, so we were involved in the creation of the gardens of a city mosque at Cambridge, and the whole the whole building was being designed and built, and and it was Mark Sparfield with the architects. They were incredible, creating this amazing eco mosque. And in front, we created the Shahabag, so the fourfold gardens, and a sacred Islamic garden, sort of like the uh, emulating a place of Eden and a place of sanctity for visitors as they come in. So the inner sanctum gardens, the Shahabag is the fourfold path, and fountains in the center, and it's a very traditional layout. And we worked with Emma Clark, a lovely Islamic garden specialist. And what was so lovely is that you had the inner sanctum within the gates of the mosque. As people arrived, the first thing they got was these amazing jeweled gardens. But before that, before the gates, we planted a community garden on the pavement with trees in it,
Oh, how brilliant.
full of plants. And what was so lovely is that the local community, Islamic and other, really, really loved all the herbs that we put in there. It was a kind of matrix of different Mediterranean or European herbs, and Perovsky, Russian sage, and things like that. And they were so excited because it was completely like their garden. It was on the city street, it was by a bus stop.
It's
But these really,
exactly what I see could be done so many places.
yeah, so really four really
Wonderful.
chunky bears, maybe like 4 by 4 meters each, with a
Mm.
big silver birch in each one. But what we then saw was people foraging, using, loving. And every
Wonderful.
time as I said, every time I got a taxi from the train station while we were building the gardens, the taxi driver would drop me off and just not let me pay, because they were
Mm,
like, "You're building, you're part of the mosque,
mm.
we wouldn't charge you for that." And it was such a wonderful project to see this interrelationship of garden and community in a city. And then not only that, a lot of women, local Islamic families, a lot of women then got jobs as gardeners
Oh,
to take care of
fantastic.
it. So there's a whole female community gardener team who have now learned how to use how all the plants work, what they all need, and are taking care of it all.
Oh, this is a vision, not my vision, everybody's vision. This is how we need to be. This is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Makes me
It's
want to go and see it.
it's so beautiful. I can take you there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's lovely. We actually they've planted our organic bulbs as well, which is really nice. So
Just tell me about the organic bowls as well, because
well, it's a brand, organicbulbs.com, and it's us putting our hearts on our sleeves around what we really feel is important in, changing horticulture into organic principles. And it's possible even on the scale of bulb production in the Netherlands and in Britain and across Europe. But we have a sort of design eye selection of organic bulbs that we mail order. And
well,
it's
you very generously brought quite a lot to give away on International Women's Day, which I now have growing in my garden. I'm very excited about.
Yeah, we did. We
So
gave some out. Exactly. I mean, it makes me very happy to know that there's organic pollen going all over the place, because that pollen has no neonicotinoids, and it's not harmful to bees and all other pollinating
Mm.
insects. And it's just the water system's intact, the air, the insects, the pollen, it's just going, it's this intact system. And we put a lot of these beautiful bulbs at Cambridge Mosque as well, and some are edible. But what I love about Cambridge is a lot of the community know far more about the forage than we do as Brits. We're really out of touch with it, but there's loads of different cultures living in that area, and they all know different plants to forage and use. And it's so great having a community garden where people can really really make the most of what we've put in. It's just the best thing, isn't it?
It's absolutely incredible. The work you do is incredible. I mean, yes, community gardens for me is how we go forward, and that's we have to. So,
And it's so easy as well. It is so easy and it makes people happy and it
yeah.
weaves communities together where language or maybe even religion might divide them.
Mm.
It weaves people together in a very, very wholesome way. Like it's a human way.
Which is, I'd like to take us on to talking about forest farming, which I have been reading and seeing an awful lot about. And you, of course, have seen tremendous success with that in India.
Yeah.
So, do you want to sort of explain about your whole India inspiration and
Yeah.
what went on there and what does go on there, actually?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I went out to Tamil Nadu to observe and learn from a very beautiful food growing system, which was developed by an Indian um, um, farmer, a local Indian farmer, who used indigenous cow um, pee and poo, so pee, urine and manure, mixed up as sort of almost like a biodynamic um, kind of fertilizer, put in ghee and jaggery and various other things, and put that back on the land in a trench and bed system. So
Mm. Very
plant,
Steiner-like, actually. Well,
yeah,
I used to live in a Steiner town, so I used to see that.
yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. Very Steiner-like in the sense of
reburying the.
using I mean, what the cow manure has a microbiome that activates the soil microbiome, and this local farmer went as far as saying it needs to be even an indigenous cow to the area. That's important.
Yes,
The
yeah,
soil match, which is you goes back to your South African medicine
yeah.
of eating the soil from the illness that you have on that soil, right? And that microbiome of the soil feeding your microbiome for healing. And I think it's the same system. So I kind of love the way they describe it. It's a trench and it's very unglamorous, a trench and bed system. So they would grow a multi-canopied food forest on the on the on the bed, and then there'd be trenches cut all along the field and all along the outside. So then they had perforated pipes through the trenches and along the beds, the wide, few meters wide beds, with the mangoes, papayas, guavas, all indigenous fruits to India. I mean, they're very lucky in Tamil. They've got a lot of options.
Hmm.
Moringa, not necessarily all fruiting things, but also some nitrogen fixing, and also underneath things like amaranth and a sort of herb crop or cereal crop underneath as well. And then this kind of the degree in which the trees grew under the hot sun, sheltered out others. Oh yeah, bananas. That was another one that's doing really well, and sheltered out others, and obviously the crop, the seed crop came up first above the baby trees in the hot sun and protected all the baby trees when they were just coming up. And then you harvest them around these new baby trees in the winter, and then by the next year the trees have grown small canopies of shade and are starting to sort themselves out. And in the first, I've been back 2 years in a row. In the second year already, we were picking beautiful giant organic, papayas.
Wonderful. Oh,
Just
amazing. And this was all initiated by a spiritual leader from the area.
yes, it's a sort of a living goddess, Amma, Sri Shakti Amma Narayani, and it's a, a local Tamil man who has been honoring the goddess Narayani for since he was 16, and he's now 49. And so much so that, and the story is very beautiful and very deep, but so much so that the goddess has come through him now. So he's actually now known as she, and spends her time honoring Narayani, pujas to Narayani morning and night. And one of the lovely things that she is dreaming in is then this ecological restoration. So over the course of 20 years, planting 2 million trees in the area.
Wow.
The rain is now coming back to Tamil because the clouds are forming on, on these reforested sacred mountains. And actually, funnily enough, these mountains were the Kailasha in Tamil, were the ones where the Siddha would sit and in meditation and bring down all the information, all the knowledge of the Ayurvedic herbs. So it's like
It's all
complete full
come full
circle.
circle. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful.
and um, and more than that, Narayani, this living goddess, says, Amma, they call her, says the Siddha back then prayed so hard for Narayani to come that she's come now. And
Beautiful. So
yeah, and
this
it's
whole
nice.
connection in between our land and our prayers and the deities and the divine energy is so clearly that it is all so connected.
Yeah, and I think just also to point out that in that trench and bed system, that all the temples in the village of and town of Vellore are built up around this particular living goddess. Obviously, also honoring all the gods. So there's a Lakshmi temple, there's a Hanuman temple, there's a Shiva temple, but it's all kind of in the zone of this the spirit of Narayani, and the temple flowers, obviously in an Indian ritual, the temple flowers pour onto the gods morning, noon, and night. And then they take those flowers and they take the prasad. But a prasad is the food that they cook for the gods.
The offerings.
Yeah, but also after you've spent your morning doing the puja, they then give you the prasad. It's they give you a taste of the food for the gods.
Yes.
Obviously, then there's, people just, throw that aside. So anyway, they collect all these amazing foods and flowers filled with energy and love for the divine. And after they've been gifted to the gods, they're then taken out and put into the trench and bed systems. So back into the composting troughs. And then this liquid feed is pumped to the through the fields every 8 days. And then you're talking about the food that's then being produced is full of this incredible love, divine energy and flow. And this is an incredible cycle. And actually when you're there, I think there's a healing energy, a divine energy there that's incredible to experience.
Sounds
Um,
absolutely amazing. Somewhere, and I love that area of India, certainly somewhere to go and visit.
yeah.
Sounds incredible.
It's an
Uh,
ancient heartbeat, really, and I think those rituals, I think, are instrumental in a lot of rituals that have then grown across the earth over time,
mm,
and with different cultures. But the temples of Tamil kind of
they're so
look like
ritualized, aren't they?
they look
The
like the
whole
temples
Hindu
of
culture.
Cambodia,
Yeah.
and of
Buddhism.
I mean, I just think there's
Indonesia, Bali, you see all that.
yeah, exactly. And I think there's something about the Mayan. I think there's something about
Yeah.
I think there's
Mm.
a seed there in Tamil
Yeah.
Nadu. For me, it's like an ancient heartbeat of the earth. It's like there's something so old there. Um, and yeah, it's very congruent. And
Mm.
it's this full cycle. And I
Mm.
think that's when you're coming back into this growing your own vegetables, working together as community. I also would say, feeding in divine energies and love with that,
Mm.
and honoring. I think that these are the things that have got slashed out of our cultures and communities as women have been slashed out.
Yeah.
Um, and I think these are the things that we must focus on now, and it's our connection to our relationship with love and honor for everything that comes to us, everything we're blessed with, and
And
just
respect, deep
thank you, thank
respect.
you, thank you. And
Yeah.
creating this reciprocation, which is basically infinity kind of symbol, isn't it? It's like thank you, I've got it. Thank you, I've received it, and it's like, here's
Thank you,
something,
I give it. I
and
receive, I
thank you, I
give, I
give.
receive, I
Yeah,
give.
I give, I
Yeah.
receive. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
Um,
I agree with you completely. It's just a beautiful way of looking at things.
and
And
actually, one of our clients in Dorset who are putting a huge area of land. So they are a wealthier estate owner with a large tract of land. They're weaving ecological restoration not only on their land, so they've reintroduced beavers. They're wilding sections of the land around the river.
yeah, this is exactly what I was going to start asking you about, the water, the rivers, the beavers.
Yeah. Well,
That
that's
way,
all.
back from India, how do we do it in our country?
Yeah. But this particular project I'm just thinking of, based on something you said earlier about community and land ownership, is that they also have apportioned a certain, field, and they're going into a reciprocal a two-way relationship with a young couple who want to grow food.
Oh, really? I had a conversation with some others about something very similar the other day because so many young families and young couples want to get on the land and they can't find it, afford it, have permission to
Yeah.
build anything. And it was exactly that. How can the big landowners do some kind of reciprocal arrangement where young people can live and grow their own food and be on
Yeah, and a
land?
security that if the landowner changes hands, that they don't get kicked off if they've just
Hmm.
invested all their, good years into building something and the nutrition of the soil, and it's just really lovely to see a very well thinking estate where they're really looking, they're future
Absolutely.
proofing, and they're looking about that long-term relationship and security for a young family that they can use a portion of the land for food production, which then feeds back into the community because everyone gets organic veg boxes in the village, which they couldn't before. A young family then gets a living,
Are
and
they
allow.
actually living on the land? Because that's one of the other
No,
problems. Because
no, they won't
people
be
are finding
living.
it very difficult to get planning permission to build something on the land as
Yeah,
well.
I don't think it's about that for this particular
This is
estate.
about growing.
Well, because I don't think there would be permission
No,
on
that's the
part of
point.
field.
That's what keeps coming up is the antiquated planning permission laws, which stop people unless they're in a caravan living on the land as well as working on them. As also means that the farmers, some of the farmers that were at my place on International Women's Day, were saying where they're finding it so hard to find staff and people to come and work with them because they've
Yeah,
got nowhere for them to stay, and the
yeah.
planning laws are so crazy. But that's wonderful to hear about that. And let's talk about the beavers because I know you're passionate about that and you see the changes they make and they are coming back. And you put some fun beavers as part of your display at Chelsea Flower Show when you won, which were kind of cardboard beavers, I think, at that point. But tell me about the beavers and the work you've done with them or are doing.
Well, I mean, actually, we didn't have cobble beavers, but
Oh,
we
I thought
put.
you said you had not cardboard, but I thought you said you'd made some kind of fun beaver. Was it real? Well, presumably it wasn't real beavers then.
No, I did actually joke to a couple of bypassers that we did have real beavers living in the lodge that we created, but we didn't actually.
Oh.
I think it would have been a bit much for London to have set free some beavers, or a bit much for the beavers actually. But the yeah, that was just an extraordinary project for us. In 22, we were invited by an amazing project charity called Project Giving Back, which was like a philanthropic overarching charity supporting designers and smaller charities at Chelsea Flower Show. And they invited us to be the designers to create a garden according to our own vision and our own loves, and to choose a charity of our choice
Oh. Hmm.
to support. So we were given the money by Project Giving Back, and then we got to invite a charity in. So I mean, we when we first had the conversations with Project Giving Back, and we we were sort of, is this a joke? Like, what's the catch?
Hmm.
This is crazy. This is extraordinary. But it's completely different from the sort of champagne sponsored, kind of flashy bank sponsored
Absolutely.
um,
Just because
garden.
ironic as the main sponsor is also from this area of the
The
Chelsea
main
Flower Show.
sponsor, yeah, yeah, that first year actually, the Newt decided to
Yeah.
come in and sponsor. But yeah, I mean, it was extraordinary, and it was amazingly provident for Adam and I, because we'd sort of flirted with the idea of a Chelsea garden for many years. Adam was keener than I was, and I kind of always struggled slightly with the resource, sort of using so much resource on something that was a show,
Hmm.
and not making something real. Um, and so we'd sort of, danced around it. Adam thought it would be good to do and good fun and all sorts. And anyway, this extraordinary opportunity came to us, and we really just looked at each other and just said, well, if there was a garden to do, it would be the beavers. And a lot of that was to do with being inspired by what's happening here in Somerset, and seeing some incredible habitats where beavers have
Mm.
found their way, and being so inspired by understanding more about a dynamic landscape, a really dynamic landscape, a real dynamic landscape where nature is kind of reactivated and it leads to a bioflourishing. And it's just extraordinary. And beavers are one of the keys. They're known as a keystone species in rewilding because they are one of the keys. They're like the keystone on an archway system. So if they hold up the archway to the whole river system, the beavers, they are the keystone there. And if you get them back into your arch, the whole arc of the river survives and thrives. And when you see that happening in real life, which you can now, even here in Somerset, it just blows you away. And your whole trajectory from a crashing environmental, you know, wildlife chain completely changes to a, trajectory to a thriving one, and a
And all
bioflower.
the fish you were saying and writing also that fish that you didn't even know the names of, despite having two small sons, there were all these wonderful different beings, creatures that suddenly appeared once the beavers
Yeah.
got the rivers
Yeah.
cleaned
Working
up.
with ecologists in our research to the garden, just learning how fast all the species come back, how the river, the stream river fish come back, all those things that we heard of as children or not even heard of, you know, suddenly like, my God, they're all here, like in a matter of couple of years, few years. And it's like, how do they even get here? Like they weren't here before. But yeah, the miracles of nature, really. And yeah, I mean, beavers are unbelievable, and they were made extinct here in this land around 500 years ago. And they were very much part of this land. In fact, they're very much part of any land that where trees coppice. So if you cut a tree gently and it reshoots, that's a coppicing tree. And any country where trees coppice naturally, they naturally grow and regenerate. Those are trees that have co-evolved with beavers. And so there's a very few amount of countries that doesn't happen, like South America and Australia, I think. But everywhere else, beavers were endemic, and um, yeah, we're welcoming them
And
back
they're
with open
back.
arms.
I mean,
And the other thing I was writing about in those articles was about what happens to the water, and when we start changing the water system, when we start bringing the nutrient cycle back at the headlands of the rivers, then it affects all the way down to the seas, right?
and then the
And
sea cleans up, hopefully.
yeah, exactly. And it's a big, it's I don't know if it's a process you'd like me to kind of explain, but it's an extraordinary, it makes so much sense when you hear it. You're like, oh, and actually our work at the tree conference kind of informed some of those key pieces of information for me, because we worked with and one of our speakers in around 2011 was Diana Beresford Kroger,
I
who's
heard that talk. I was at that tree conference and I heard her speak. Was
yeah.
she in Canada or somewhere?
Yeah, in
Yeah,
Canada. It's
she was fantastic.
incredible uh, sort of nature scientist, lover, writer, and climate um,
And
scientist.
General Witch, as I think she even called herself, just an amazing, amazing, brilliant, wise woman.
Yeah, and so she was explaining how important the tree leaves are if they are stilled on landscape and in water. So areas like mangrove swamps or beaver environments where the leaves drop down from the trees and then hold in the water because the beavers have dammed and water holds on the land, the still water holds. And when those leaves dissolve in the water, you get the crucial fluvial minerals coming into the water. So that's water minerals. Um, So it comes, um, um, yeah, I think that's all you need to say. And then those turn into phytominerals, and they feed, if they run down a river system, they feed the phytonutrients. Oh gosh, I hope I'm getting this all right. And the phytoplankton, then the plankton, and then the krill in the oceans. So basically, if you have nitrogen fed river systems running too fast, which we have all over Britain, um, straight down into the sea, they're filled with nitrogen, which is a sort of high sugar kind of um, ingredient, kind of almost like a candida. I see it as a candidiasis of the water systems, and then it feeds the sea and creates kind of like an algal bloom, like a candidiasis. Or you have this rich fluvial waters, sweet waters, the other way, sweet, coming down, water's slowed, moves gently, much more nutritious, a kind of generating ecocycles, emerging species everywhere. And then that sweet water arrives down into the oceans, and with it feeds the phytoplankton, the plankton, the krill, and then that kickstarts the whole food chains of the oceans. So
Amazing.
don't quote me on that.
No, but you're
That
on
is
the
not a
podcast now.
scientist
I mean,
version.
what you are is you are, among other things, an educator. And so much of this is about education. And it's how we can all learn from each other about the land and things like the beavers and stuff we don't know. So much we don't know. So much that is not taught at school, that is not taught in community. But we will start it. So, I've
It's
just
so
been
true.
really, really fantastic to have you here today. Is there anything you would like to add how you see your vision for yourself or for your family going forward or for the world? I mean, it is obviously about regenerative land that we talked before when we met in at the event that it was all of the land is so depleted and that then affects our health and our own well-being and we need to regenerate the land for our own sake and the more the point, the generations to come, the young generations, the generations to come, and create this ecological restoration, basically, which is what you're so passionate about and quite so rightly so. Um, do you want to sort of come, because we're going to come, we're kind of running out of time. So if you want to just add anything at this point.
Yeah, well, I think Adam and I see ourselves as storytellers, actually. I think that's what we like to.
Uh-huh, nice.
Well, that's how I realize we are. We've
I think
received a story.
education comes through storytelling, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess so. And we see what's happening, we listen to what's happening, and then we can tell it out. And that's just a real joy of ours. And so thanks, and thanks for having me. But also, I think based on what you've just said, and regenerative farming systems, regenerative land systems, I think we are a crystal mirror to our earth. And we spoke of this the other day, didn't we?
Mm,
And it's that we are exactly how she is.
mm,
And at the moment, she's quite sick. And we are reflecting that back.
yes.
And I think whenever I feel about regenerative land projects and whenever I feel about good soil, nourishment, biodynamic food that's full of that kind of goodness, love, chatty love, talkative love, songs, happiness, laughter,
Mm,
sunshine, rain, all of it. Um, you're talking about a vitality that is just makes me feel amazing. And it makes me feel really different. I mean, my hand can't even go onto a supermarket shelf and pick off a kind of low vibe thing these days. I just can't take it off a
mm,
shelf. And I know it costs me a load more money to choose other things, but it's a pound I'd rather spend like on something I know is alive because
yeah.
I it's going to feed me and make me alive. And I think, I mean, I've walked land. I've walked land in the day and I've walked land in the dark. And I know when I'm on land that's treated well. I can feel it. and it has a chatty nature. It talks to you. It's an
Mm.
aliveness. And I think anyone knows that. Anyone knows that. And
Mm.
it's just about getting into our listening bodies and moving out of our minds, But I think when we actually all go into our own feeling, sensing bodies, and we say, what's good for me, what we'll see is what's good for us, is what's good for the earth,
Mm.
I think.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lulu. It's what a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to putting this podcast out in the next week or so and letting other people hear your wisdom and your stories and your inspiration. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Blessings and
It's such
love.
an honor. Yeah, you too. Blessings and love. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed listening to my inspirational conversation with Lulu Urquhart and her ideas and thoughts on how the sacred feminine is in every part of nature. The unique exercise I'd like to suggest to go with this podcast would be perhaps to go for a wander today and feel the gratitude to Mother Nature herself from the special, wonderful gifts that she constantly gives. Make a note of the smells, the colours, the visual delights, the sounds of the bees, the butterfly wings, at least 5 things that you can acknowledge today, whether in your local park or in your own garden, and say thank you, thank you, thank you. If you enjoyed what you heard and would like to learn more practical methods to help you plant your seeds in your own empowerment journey, then please subscribe to this podcast, rate it and review. Also, please make sure you visit lynnefranks.com, where you can join my mailing list if you haven't already, and together with thousands of other like-minded women, become part of my seed network, meeting up through my coaching courses, seed programs, retreats, and many other gatherings.